are these people?
You might like this because you watch movies.
I like the graphic
more than me.
Graphic's good. Well done.
Well, that's from their. This is from their
poster
marketing poster. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, if you watch movies more so than me, so this might be a movie that you might be interested in, and maybe our audience. We're trying to do what we can to uplift more Palestinian voices, and this might be a way of doing that, as well as putting our money where our mouths are if we want to support what's happening in Palestine, to actually support this movie that talks about what's happening in the West Bank. So the movie, as you can see, is called No Other Land. But as I said earlier, there is a problem. There's no distribution company in the States,
of course,
that is willing to promote this movie. You can probably guess why. So what we're going to do first, actually, hopefully now YouTube, this is fair use.
This is fair use. Shit.
We're gonna watch the trailer of this movie, just so you can get the gist of what it is, and then there's an article where we get more details about it. But yeah, let's see if this is, well, actually, technically it's a documentary, but so let's watch this trailer and we'll chat.
1,000 Palestinians face one of the single biggest expulsion decisions since the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories began in 1967.
الرياضة هي المكان اللي كبرت فيه. بداية
Come on.
تصويري هي بداية نهاية. أنا يوغال، كيفك؟ هو صحفي بيكتب عن هذا عادي ولا يهود؟ عالم كامل مبني على الفصل.
ممكن يكون أخوك أو صاحبك إجا وهدم فيه.
شو ممكن نسوي يعني؟
He spent years documenting Israeli efforts to evict Palestinians living in Masafriyata.
بدك شيء يصير شيء بسرعة الله شيء يستمر لسنين. يدمرونا شوي شوي. أصعب نضال هو الثبات في الأرض. مسافة رياضة موجودة لسبب واحد، الناس بتوجد حياة لنفسها.
So yeah, we talk about how the West Bank gets no love. Obviously, Gaza is a big deal, but this movie, this documentary actually is, I would argue, and I haven't seen it, but given what I've seen of it, is, I think, probably the best and probably most effective way of kind of showing the reality of what has been happening in the West Bank that no one really talks about. But as I said, it's getting Oscar buzz, surprisingly. But there's no distributor in America at the moment. So this is an article posted from ScheerPost, which was taken from the conversation. It's written by Drew Paul, where he writes, a Palestinian-Israeli film is an Oscars favorite, so why is it so hard to see? And actually, let us know in the comments if you actually ever heard of this documentary before, because I hadn't heard of it prior to maybe Monday and kind of prepping for this stream tonight. So anyway, so Drew writes, for many low-budget independent films, an Oscar nomination is a golden ticket. The publicity can translate into theatrical releases or re-releases, along with more on-demand rentals and sales. However, for No Other Land, a Palestinian-Israeli film nominated for Best Documentary at the 2025 Academy Awards, this exposure is unlikely to translate into commercial success in the US. That's because the film has been unable to find a company to distribute it in America. No Other Land chronicles the efforts of Palestinian townspeople to combat an Israeli plan to demolish their villages in the West Bank and use the area as a military training ground. It was directed by 4 Palestinian and Israeli activists and journalists: Bassel Adar, who is a resident of the area facing demolition, Yuval Abraham, Hadam Balal, and Rachel Soar. So Bassel and Yuval are the 2 that you see in the picture there, from left to right. While the filmmakers have organized screenings in a number of U.S. cities, the lack of a national distributor makes a broader release unlikely. Film distributors are a crucial but often unseen link in the chain that allows a film to reach cinemas and people's living rooms. In recent years, it has become more common for controversial award-winning films to run into issues finding a distributor. Palestinian films have encountered additional barriers. As a scholar of Arabic who has written about Palestinian cinema, I'm disheartened by the difficulties no other land has faced, but I'm not surprised.
Yep.
Distributors are often invisible to moviegoers, but without one, it can be difficult for a film to find an audience. Distributors typically acquire rights to a film for a specific country or set of countries. Then they market films to movie theaters, cinema chains, and streaming platforms. As compensation, distributors receive a percentage of the revenue generated by theatrical and home releases. The film Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, another finalist for Best Documentary, shows how this progress typically works. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in January 2024 and was acquired for a distributor just for a few months later by Kino Lorber, a major US-based distributor of independent films. The inability to find a distributor is not in itself noteworthy. No film is entitled to distribution, and most films by newer or unknown directors face long odds. However, it is unusual for a film like No Other Land, which has garnered critical acclaim and has been recognized at various film festivals and award shows. Some have pegged it as a favorite to win Best Documentary at the Academy Awards, and No Other Land has been able to find distributors in Europe, where it's easily accessible on multiple streaming programs. So why can't No Other Land find a distributor in the US? There are a couple of factors at play. In recent years, film critics have noticed a trend. Documentaries on controversial topics have faced distribution difficulties. These include a film about a campaign by Amazon workers to unionize, and a documentary about Adam Kinzinger, one of the few Republican congressmen to vote to impeach Donald Trump in 2021. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, of course, has long stirred controversy, but the release of No Other Land comes at a time when the issue is particularly salient. The Hamas attacks on October 7, 2023, and the ensuing Israeli bombardment and invasion of the Gaza Strip have become a polarizing issue in U.S. domestic politics, reflected in the campus protests and crackdowns in 2024, which you just talked about in your last segment.
Yep.
Filmmakers' critical comments about the Israeli occupation of Palestine has also garnered backlash in Germany. Yet the fact that this conflict has been in the news since October 2023 should also heighten audience interest in a film such as No Other Land, and therefore lead to increased sales, the metric that distributors care about the most. Indeed, an earlier film that also documents Palestinian protests against Israeli land expropriation,
Five Broken Cameras. You ever watched it?
Mm-mm.
You should watch that. I watched it like back when it was like making the rounds. Very good.
Right. Was a finalist for Best Documentary at the 2013 Academy Awards. It was able to find a U.S. distributor. However, it had the support of a major European Union documentary development program called Greenhouse.
Yeah.
The support of an organization like Greenhouse, which has tied to numerous production and distribution companies in Europe and the US, can facilitate the process of finding a distributor. By contrast, No Other Land, although it has a Norwegian co-producer and receives some funding from organizations in Europe and the US, was made primarily by grassroots filmmaking collective. While distribution challenges may be recent, controversies surrounding Palestinian films are nothing new. Many of them stem from the fact that the system of film festivals, awards, and distribution is primarily based on a movie's nation of origin. Since there's no sovereign Palestinian state, and many countries and organizations have not recognized the state of Palestine.
Yeah.
The question how to categorize Palestinian films has been hard to resolve. In 2002, the Academy for Motion Picture Arts and Sciences rejected the first ever Palestinian film submitted to the Best Foreign Language Film category, Elia Suleiman's Divine Intervention, because Palestine was not recognized as a country by the United Nations. The rules were changed for the following year's award ceremony.
Funny.
In 2021, the cast of the film Let It Be Morning, which had an Israeli director but primarily Palestinian actors, boycotted the Cannes Film Festival in protest of the film's categorization as an Israeli film rather than a Palestinian one.
Yeah.
Film festivals and other cultural venues have also become places to make statements about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and engage in protest. For example, at the Cannes Film Festival in 2017, the right-wing Israeli culture minister wore a controversial and meme-worthy dress that featured the Jerusalem skyline in support of Israeli claims of sovereignty over the holy city, despite the unresolved status of Jerusalem under international law. At the 2024 Academy Awards, a number of attendees, including Billie Eilish, Mark Ruffalo, and Mahershala Ali, wore red pins in support of a ceasefire in Gaza and pro-Palestinian supporters delaying the start of the ceremonies, which we kind of talked about briefly last year, that while I wouldn't say it was bad, but kind of
performative, but yes.
Performative. But there's also a reason to that too, which is why I'm kind of mixed on that. So even though a film like No Other Land addresses a topic of clear interest to many people in the US, it faces an uphill battle to finding a distributor. I wonder whether a win at the Oscars would even be enough. So the other two gentlemen there. Thoughts?
Well, I'm interested to see it. I'll watch.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm sure it's going to be heartbreaking, but I think films like that, like Five Broken Cameras, like, it's how the U.S., views its media, Like, they're not reading these things. They're not, they're seeing it on TikTok. They might watch a movie about it, but it at least allows you to sit down with people and be like, you know what? Let's watch this. Again, Pilger's documentaries come to mind, right? There's a couple others that I'm sure people will throw in when in regards to Palestinian film. But it's definitely, of course, it's not being distributed. The best thing to me would be to make it public, at least self-host it so that you can watch it, or, people will pay you directly to watch it. You don't necessarily need a distributor as much anymore, unless you want to get in theaters. That's the thing. If you want to get in theaters, you need that. So
I actually got an update because when I was researching this, I have some information regarding that. But let's see what Basel and Yuval have to say in regards to the documentary being essentially somewhat blackballed.
يكون كثير حلو إذا نسيت بعدين أنتوا بتيجوا تزوروني مش أنا بزوركم ولا لا؟ We came to this film in a way after feeling that journalism had failed us. We're both journalists, and we've written about the ongoing occupation in Masaf Riyata and specifically about the policy of house demolitions. So every single week, the Israeli military destroys a house or several houses in this area of Masaf Riyata. And there is something about journalism that only scratches the surface. An article can't tell you what it feels like to watch your own house being destroyed, or what it's like to see your son get shot, and then you cannot have a room to place your son. You have to live in a dirty cave just because the military does not give you a building permit. It's a way to push you out. We had thousands and thousands of hours of footage. The Masaf Riyata community for decades has been also documenting itself, and violence is ongoing. It's a daily part of the military occupation. And at the end of the day, this is about human beings, about emotions. And we hoped that by making this film, we are able to show the world a deeper layer of what the military occupation means for human beings, a layer that you cannot always feel or reach when you are making the journalistic article, which we are still doing.
We're filming because we want to document what's going on in our community. Like, the idea, it's not just making the movie, it's like documenting. It's not an easy thing. Even some of the footage are in the movie itself, like how we got hurt and attacked and arrested by soldiers and settlers when we are in the field. It's not us who have the power to control, so we try always to be safe, but it don't work all the time.
Obviously, the military occupation is based on military law. That's the Palestinian, like Basel, who is living under this law, does not decide it. It's military decrees. That's the commander. One commander can just write and sign, and that's it. And what military law enables soldiers to do is to invade pretty much any village they want. They can enter any house they want. They don't even need a warrant to do that. And they can effectively confiscate anything they want. And it happened several times that soldiers invaded Basel's house just because they knew people were filming, and they confiscated, like, what was it, Bassel? Like laptops,
cameras and laptops.
So it was, there's been a lot of pressure from different sides while we were
those
making
aren't
this
cheap
film.
things.
And I'm really glad we were able to do it. Like, I think you risk your life maybe, I don't know how many times.
The movie is succeeding in Europe, also in the US, in festivals. There is a requirement for the movie. People want to watch it, want to see it, and we're happy with that, with this success, and we hope that millions of people will watch it around the world and here in the US. But as you said, on the ground, the opposite is happening. Like the situation is like getting worse and worse because of all of what's going on. I mean, they're using the opportunities of like the war and this to do other stuff on the ground. But it's important what we are doing. I believe like it's important that we keep push and tell the people and make our story being heard and seen. The people here should be part of the change that will happen because their governments are a part of this game.
I think the US is probably the most important place for us to show the film. When you watch the film, you will see the sheer amount of violence that is used on an everyday basis by the Israeli government, successive governments, in order to expel, to push out, to transfer, to ethnically cleanse a region of the West Bank. And the idea behind that is that this is a way to prevent a Palestinian state. The United States has, in its rhetoric, supported a Palestinian state, but its actions, where its money goes, its diplomatic cover to the state of Israel, have actually worked to prevent that state. So in a way, the US foreign policy matches what the military is doing. Like, why has the United States not recognized a Palestinian state? Why are there no conditions to money, weapons that are going and being used in an occupied territory that's illegal under international law, under the ICJ? We're really hoping that people watch this. There will be a substantial change in foreign policy that will help us on the ground end the occupation and reach a situation of true freedom for Palestinians and justice and equality for Israelis and Palestinians in the land. And this core resistance that we are doing is aimed at that.
So I talked about in my early segment with Aaron Bushnell that he made an extreme act of protest in order. These journalists are doing the same thing in a different way, but they basically answered the question as to, like, it's getting play in Europe. Why is it not? Well, not to say why, but it's like it's being blackballed here because, as what Drew said in the article, like, controversial shit gets popular and people will watch this movie, this documentary, and God forbid that people get educated on what's happening in the West Bank. People are going to start asking questions, and the Israeli lobby and definitely, the powers that be that have a hold on our government do not want that to happen. So, of course, there's not going to be a distributor no distributor here is going to take that kind of risk, to promote a movie like this, especially one. Well, I think especially since this is not a documentary that is just done by Palestinians alone. Like, this is done in collaboration with Palestinian and Israeli journalists, like, who are not anti-Zionist, I would assume, that are essentially reporting on the ground, the settlement culture that is happening in the West Bank right now. So, it's not in the American distributors' interest to put any money in this because, not to say they will go bankrupt, but I'm sure the Israeli lobby is going to throw that money to essentially shut this documentary down, and they will not make a profit on it.
Yeah. Agreed.
But yeah, so I pulled up some tweets because, as I said, it's we'll get into it in a minute, but you can see it here, but it's under very limited release. But this is from Jonathan Cook, another British journalist. We've read his work before on the show, where he tweeted, "No other land telling the story of Israel's gradual destruction of Palestinian communities in the West Bank, in contrast to the overnight erasure of such communities in Gaza, is nominated for an Oscar, and yet it can't find a U.S. distributor."
Yeah.
And then we just talked about why. So this is from at Broser ATU. "I finally saw No Other Land, and I know it's been said, but the fact that the most important film of 2024 may well win an Oscar and remain undistributed in the US disgusts me beyond description. Hollywood remains full of cowards."
It also shows you how much like it doesn't matter what happens here in the States sometimes. Like,
Right.
as far as that is concerned. So, you know, Indie wanting to remind people, Jonathan K. Cook, Indie Media Award honoree. But yeah, I mean, it's just like you can get Oscar, like it might win the Oscars and it never play here. Says a lot.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, like, but you got this one.
From at Sriracha Cha, who said, "Saw No Other Land tonight, an urgent document of great cruelty and dehumanization from a genocidal occupation, but also an illustration of life and hope for the Palestinian people. However, the central question remains: someone watches something, they're touched, and then." This is from at Burrito Thief. "I need someone with industry connections to do a deep dive in investigative long-form piece about why film distributors, especially the more boutique distributors, refuse to pick up No Other Land even after it started winning awards. We know why, but I want their responses on paper." You could probably write that yourself.
Yeah.
This is from at Jake Jones SWR. "It should bother every movie enthusiast with no end that No Other Land has managed to blaze right through award season, essentially as a front runner of this category, this entire category, I guess he meant to say, and still not one U.S. studio has elected to distribute it."
Yeah.
From at Natalie Shirley, "No Other Land was powerful and devastating. Once the credits started rolling, no one in the theater stirred for almost a full minute." At Strokes Vivo, "I just went to a screening for No Other Land, and I just can't comprehend how anyone can turn their back on Palestinians." At Nook Velour, "Something about No Other Land and the attention it's receiving has been bothering me. Naturally, the liberal establishment and Hollywood champion Israeli/Palestinian cooperation against this occupation, quote unquote, conveniently avoiding any confrontation with Zionism itself as a genocidal white supremacist ideology. The two-sidism/normalizing approach permeates through No Other Land from its title and the friendship it highlights. Meanwhile, films which promote the Palestinian perspective alone, i.e. the voices of the oppressed, IG From Ground Zero and Al Jazeera's The Night Won't End, offer a much braver and more incisive perspective and are more deserved of recognition. But of course, Empire does not want to promote a solution to a condition it profits from. I would much rather put forth a narrative that is hopeless. The dismantlement of Zionism is out of the question for these establishments." I agree with most of that. "Imagine a project with European settlers and indigenous folks entitled No Other Land. That would be ludicrous, wouldn't it?" And yep, I think that's all the tweets that I pulled. But like I said earlier, so I did some little research. You can see it. It's a limited release. So if you look online, I imagine it's probably playing at like cities mostly. But you can see it in the theaters in select places. So my suggestion to people, if you do want to see this documentary, is to go online and see where it is playing. And as I said, if you're near a theater that is playing it, I would say, again, put your money where your mouth is. And if you want to support Palestinian liberation, at minimum, at least go see the documentary. And if you're watching this, like at some point in the future, when we clip this out, if you watch it, let us know what you think. Is it deserving of the Oscar praise that is deserving? And it could be worth something. Maybe we could look into later. We can do an update to see. I don't watch the Oscars at all, but it could be worth seeing if this movie does win the Oscar, and will it give rise to more awareness of this documentary? We'll see. But yeah, it's actually playing at a theater near me, so I'll probably will watch it at some point within the next probably week or two. I'll let you guys know if I do what I think of it. But yeah, we'll do an update and we'll follow this documentary to see how it does in the Oscars.
Cool. I'm down. I'm sure there's some fun stuff that's going to come from that if they do. Will Smith might slap somebody again. We don't know.
I would imagine, again, it's limited release right now. So even if it does win the Oscar, I'm sure.
Oh, they'll probably do that thing where it's not even one of the Oscars that's actually part of the televised Oscars.
Right.
It'll get an award, but ain't nobody's going to be allowed to be brought up to talk about anything. So
right.
But yeah, we'll see. So,
but stories like these, even though they're good, are not ad revenue worthy on YouTube, which is why we are demonetized. But we don't particularly care about that. So number one, as I said, go watch this film if you can, if you are able to watch it. Hopefully at some point, or as I said, you can watch it. I believe you can watch it on streaming platforms overseas. I'm not going to tell you how you can do that, but if you're able to do it, figure it out. But regardless, if you want to help us, support us in talking about stories like these, and more especially if you are able to use your money to actually uplift a story like this, highly recommend you see this movie. Otherwise, if you want to help us at INN that we're able to continue talking about stories like this, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or you can go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen there. If you're in the YouTube chat, and if you forget the link, you can type in !donate, all one word, and the link will pop up in the chat. You can click on the link and you can give money to us there. If you are not able to give financially, the best way you can help us is through, you guys are doing very well at this, word of mouth, but definitely like, share, and subscribe to our content, and make sure you give a like. So do that at some point if you haven't already. And let us know in the chat, especially after you type this, if you watch this as a clip later. Did you see it? What did you think? And is it worthy of the Oscar that people are saying it deserves? So make sure you go and support this documentary. Help us at INN to help us get to 3K. And thanks for watching.